The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "In the law, what do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The Gospel of the Lord. So good evening, everybody. As Catherine said, my name is Brendan O'Rourke. I'm a Yellow Belly. I'm a Wexford man originally, and I live in our Redemptorist community in Esker in County Galway. I was here about 10 years ago preaching at the Novena, and enjoyed it very much, enjoyed being with you, and I was delighted to be invited back to be with you again here this time. There are a few notices. Tomorrow the Novena times are different. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9:30, 11, 12:30, 2:30, 4:30, 6, 7:30, and then the final one tomorrow night is the 9 o'clock in candlelight. There's no 10:30 on Sunday evening. And the 2:30 session tomorrow is the blessing of babies and children. So there isn't any mass at that 2:30 session. Every child will be blessed and receive a medal, and we will have some very special guests attending, as you may know from previous years. I think I saw one of them coming in there just as mass was starting. The collection at the baby session will go to Marie Goretti Foundation in Lordship, which provides respite care and support for children in challenging situations. I wonder how many of us would have stopped on that dangerous road from Jerusalem to Jericho to help the victim of that severe mugging. I've never even stopped to help someone change a tire along the side of the road. Sometimes I suppose I tell myself I'm too busy, but I think maybe a more fundamental reason I don't stop is because I'm not particularly good at changing tires, so I don't think I'd be any great asset to anybody even if I did stop. There's a French television station that did a Good Samaritan experiment. I found it very interesting what they did. They had this fairly young man, and he was dirty, torn clothes, unshaven, his hair was all matted with mud, and his assignment was to go and walk out onto the footpath or the sidewalk of a fairly busy city street, probably Paris. And then what he was supposed to do was he was supposed to start coughing and then begin to start stumbling and eventually fall down on the ground, on his face on the ground. And then he was to stay there and just say quietly, aide-moi, help me, help me. And the camera stayed on him and you could see the people passing by either side of him. Some didn't seem to notice he was there. Some were rushing in their office clothes, just took a glance and kept going. Some were more leisurely tourists and they watched as well and they kept going. 5 minutes the camera stayed. Nobody came to help him. And then he went off and he had a shower, the same man. And he cleaned himself up. He probably put in a little bit of hair gel, put maybe a little bit of Armani or just, what is the other one? One of those other ones, Versace, body cologne on. And he got himself into a suit and tie, good polished shoes, and off he headed for the same place. And now he did the very same thing. He began to talk a bit, he began to stumble and to fall down and be down on the ground. And again, aide-moi, quietly. What happened? Within less than a minute, a number of people went to his aid and to help him. I think it would have been very interesting to interview the people and find out what was going on in them as they passed by or as they stopped to tell them, whichever they did. The lawyer in today's gospel, in asking, who is my neighbor, seems to be asking, who can I exclude and who should I include in my life? And I think there's probably a fair bit of that lawyer in each and every one of us. By the way we live our lives, we really do make decisions about who we include and who we exclude from our circle of concern. In contrast, the Samaritan in Jesus' parable doesn't ask whether the battered man naked there on the side of the road was his neighbor or not. He just was moved with compassion, and he shows mercy and he helps. About a year or two ago, I went back to the Philippine Islands where I had worked for 6 years, and I was just back for about 10 days. And one of the things I was looking forward to when I was heading for the Philippines, especially for Cebu City, which is our central house of the Redemptress in the south of the Philippines, because I was looking forward to 2 kinds of fruit, papaya and mangoes. Cebu is the capital for lovely, juicy mangoes, so I was looking forward to that. And so soon after arriving, I headed off to the market and got some lovely papaya and lovely, fresh, ripe mangoes. And I was heading back, on the way back from the market, and I was crossing over on the pedestrian bridge, crossing the highway. But I hadn't realized that in this pedestrian bridge over the highway, that it would be full of destitute children and old men, very old men, withered old men and women, begging. So there was I, my 2 shopping bags, with my papaya and my mango, and here was all these poor people, hungry, begging. And I had money in my pocket. And what did I do? I'd say to my shame, I just kept walking. As far as those people were concerned, I did nothing. Just another priest or Levite of Jesus' parable passing by on the other side. Now, I wanted to do something. I thought of giving some money, but then I thought that if I gave to one, I'd be mobbed. And so I just walked away, haunted by the empty, despairing look in their eyes. And as I walked along, of course, now the voices began to attack me internally, asking me, what kind of Christian are you anyway? Do you have any heart at all? Is it just made of stone? Here you are, your belly's full. You've got this fruit, you have money in your pocket. Nothing. But then I heard another voice deep within me as well. And maybe a more radical voice. Maybe a more gospel voice in a way. And that voice said, Brendan, you were shocked and overwhelmed by the extent of the suffering, by the destitution. You knew that something bigger than a few coins was needed. Yes, you passed by, not because you simply lacked compassion, but you were paralyzed by the size of the problem. And in a strange, paradoxical way, by not giving, I didn't salve my conscience. And the question for me is, will I just forget those poor people as time goes by? Or will I hear them? Will I see them in my mind's eye? Will I stay paralyzed? Or will I move to do something that will really help? Martin Luther King Jr. and his wife traveled down that road from Jerusalem to Jericho. They traveled in a car, it's a lot safer. And Martin Luther King made this comment afterwards. On the one hand, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's journey, but that will be only an initial act. One day, we must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed, so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and robbed as they make their journey on life's highway. True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It is not haphazard and superficial. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring. And so this evening, I thank God for the countless individuals and groups, many of them voluntary, who are really good Samaritans in our society. I'm sure many of you here in this church tonight, in your own individual lives, and maybe in groups that you belong to, are the good Samaritans of this community. Just like St. Gerard was a good Samaritan. And I pray for those of us who hold back, those among us who are too busy, maybe too self-preoccupied, whose eyes and ears and hearts are not open, who are hemmed in by our fears, by our over-concern for our security. And I pray that all of us will take the parable to heart. And it's not a parable that wants us to go away just feeling some kind of guilt or feeling bad. That's not the point of the parable, I don't believe. The parable doesn't want us to go away downhearted, but deep down, the parable wants us to go away challenged and invited to discover the depths of our compassion and the unrealized strength of our hearts and the hidden passion each of us has for justice